I've been taking care of my wife's best friend's kid. I'm exhausted, so I told my wife that I'm tired of raising a kid that is not mine. Am I the A? I, 31 male, am married to my wife Amber, 30 female, and we have a daughter, Emma, 7 female. The problem is my wife's best friend Jennifer has a daughter named Harper, 7 female. Harper's dad is a lazy sack of crap and refuses to do anything with his daughter. He is the type of guy that brags about how he never changed a diaper. To elaborate, Harper's dad epitomizes the worst kind of uninvolved parenting. While most fathers would cherish the opportunity to bond with their children, he prides himself on his detachment. His lack of participation isn't limited to diaper changes, it extends to every aspect of Harper's upbringing. He doesn't attend her school events, help with homework, or show any interest in her hobbies. His weekends are spent drinking and watching sports, completely ignoring Harper's need for a father figure. Jennifer, despite her best efforts, struggles to fill the void left by Harper's dad. She juggles work, household responsibilities, and trying to be both mother and father to Harper. The emotional and financial burden is immense, and it's clear that Jennifer is often exhausted and overwhelmed. This situation has led Jennifer and Harper to spend most weekends at our house while Harper's dad is drinking and watching sports all weekend. Amber and Jennifer have been best friends for years, and Amber feels a strong sense of duty to support Jennifer and Harper. However, this dynamic has created a unique set of challenges for me. Every Saturday, the time I had hoped to dedicate exclusively to Emma is now shared with Harper. It's not that I don't care for Harper, but the situation feels unfair, especially when Harper's own father should be stepping up. My frustration boils over when I think about how Harper's dad's neglect impacts not only Jennifer and Harper but also my family. It's disheartening to see such a blatant disregard for parental responsibilities. His behavior isn't just lazy, it's irresponsible and selfish. He seems content to let others pick up his slack, while he remains in his bubble of indifference. The resentment builds as I find myself taking on roles that Harper's dad should fulfill. Whether it's teaching the girls to ride bikes, taking them to dance class, or simply being a present and attentive father figure, these responsibilities weigh heavily on me. It's not Harper's fault, and I know that, but the constant intrusion on my father-daughter time with Emma leaves me feeling increasingly resentful. What's worse is that Harper's dad's attitude hasn't changed, despite numerous opportunities for him to step up. He remains steadfast in his neglect, leaving Jennifer and Harper to fend for themselves. This ongoing neglect not only affects Harper's emotional well-being but also places an undue burden on Jennifer, who is left to shoulder the parental responsibilities alone. It's a cycle of frustration and disappointment that affects everyone involved. In conclusion, while my wife and I strive to support Jennifer and Harper, the situation with Harper's dad remains a significant source of tension. His failure to be a responsible parent impacts not only his own family but also ours, as we find ourselves compensating for his shortcomings. Mother's Day was the last straw. That Saturday morning I took both Emma and Harper to their dance class. Amber and I pay for both girls' classes because Harper's dad, the deadbeat, won't contribute a cent. This has always been a sore point for me, but I've tolerated it for the sake of peace. However, this Mother's Day pushed me over the edge. After dance class, Emma asked if we could stop to get something for her mom for Mother's Day. I agreed, wanting to make the day special for Amber. But as soon as Harper heard this, she asked if we could also get something for her mom, Jennifer. Instantly, a wave of frustration washed over me. Why was it falling on me to buy a Mother's Day gift for someone else's wife? That's her dad's responsibility, not mine. As we drove home, I couldn't shake off the anger bubbling inside me. Here I was, trying to do something nice for Amber, and it turned into another chore imposed by Harper's dad's neglect. I couldn't help but think about all the times I've had to step in for him. Whether it's dance class fees or buying Mother's Day gifts, his absence is constantly felt. It's not just about the money, it's about the principle. This man is shirking his duties, and I'm left picking up the pieces. A few days later, after Mother's Day had passed, I decided it was time to speak up. I didn't want to ruin the holiday for Amber, so I waited until the right moment. When I finally broached the subject with her, I tried to be as calm and rational as possible. I told her that I was tired of raising Harper and that her real father needed to step up. I expressed how it was taking away precious time I wanted to spend with Emma. It's not that I don't care about Harper, but the constant burden was becoming too much. Amber didn't take it well. She insisted that Jennifer is her best friend and that we need to be there for Harper. I understand her perspective, but it felt like my concerns were being dismissed. The conversation quickly turned heated, and Amber ended up not speaking to me. She's been sleeping in the guest bedroom ever since. The silence in our home is deafening. I didn't want to cause a rift, but I felt like I had no choice but to voice my frustration. It's hard enough balancing work and family life without the added pressure of compensating for Harper's dad's negligence. I hoped that Amber would understand where I was coming from, but instead, it feels like she's chosen Jennifer's needs over mine. This situation has left me feeling isolated and misunderstood. I love Amber and I want to support her, but I also need her to see how this is affecting me and our family. I'm at a loss for how to move forward. Just wanted to add some additional info. Emma and Harper are best friends. Their bond is incredibly strong, and they do almost everything together. Seeing them so close is heartwarming, but it also complicates things. Because of their friendship, Harper is almost always at our house, especially on weekends. It was my idea to spend Saturdays with Emma. I work long hours during the week and don't get to see her as much as I'd like. Saturdays were supposed to be our special time together, a chance for me to reconnect with my daughter and create lasting memories. I also wanted to give Amber a bit of a break, some time for herself to relax and recharge. However, this plan often gets overshadowed by the presence of Harper. We pay for both girls' activities because Jennifer's husband, the deadbeat, thinks it's a waste of money to pay for dance class. Jennifer can't afford to pay by herself, so we cover the costs for Harper as well. It's frustrating because this isn't our responsibility, but we do it to ensure Harper doesn't miss out on opportunities she deserves. Jennifer and Harper do things with Amber and Emma once or twice a week during the weeknights. These outings help strengthen their bond and provide some support to Jennifer, who is struggling to manage everything on her own. While I understand the importance of these interactions, it adds to the ongoing issue of Harper's father's neglect. He should be the one stepping up and providing for his daughter, not relying on us to fill in the gaps. Update 1. Things at home were much worse than I was aware of for Jennifer, and my wife had only recently found out how bad things were. Jennifer had been dealing with a lot more than I had imagined. Her husband's neglect and emotional absence were just the tip of the iceberg. The situation was dire, and Jennifer was struggling to keep it all together for Harper's sake. Mother's Day was the straw that broke the camel's back for Jennifer as well. She grew up in a family that believed you must stay together for the kids, no matter what. But when Harper came to me for a Mother's Day gift, Jennifer had a revelation. She realized that her daughter did not see her biological father as a real dad. This moment was pivotal. It was a harsh reality check for Jennifer, making her see that staying with her husband was doing more harm than good. It was time for her to get out. Jennifer came to my wife to ask for help leaving because she had no family in the area and lacked the financial resources to leave on her own. She was desperate and had nowhere else to turn. Jennifer confided in Amber, revealing the true extent of her struggles. She was trapped in a toxic and neglectful environment, and the situation had reached a breaking point. Amber, always the compassionate friend, was deeply moved by Jennifer's plight. She knew that Jennifer needed support and a safe place to stay. So, the night my wife was going to ask me if we could help Jennifer is when I, completely unaware of the depth of Jennifer's situation, told her I was tired of raising someone else's kid. My frustration with Harper's father's negligence had built up, and I vented to Amber without realizing the full picture. That's what caused Amber's strong reaction. The Saturday after our initial argument, Jennifer did not come over and Emma went to her grandparents'. This break from the usual routine gave Amber and me a chance to have a long, uninterrupted discussion about what was really going on. Amber shared everything she had learned about Jennifer's dire circumstances. The gravity of her situation hit me hard. It wasn't just about Harper's father being a deadbeat. Jennifer was in a crisis and needed our help more than ever. Hearing the full story, I felt a deep sense of regret for my earlier outburst. Jennifer wasn't just dealing with an uninvolved partner. She was facing a serious crisis with no support system in place. Her plea to Amber wasn't just a casual ask for help, it was a desperate cry for assistance from someone she trusted. Amber's explanation made me see the situation from a different perspective. Jennifer and Harper needed more than just occasional help. They needed a stable, safe environment where they could start rebuilding their lives. My initial frustration seemed trivial in comparison to the urgency of Jennifer's need for a lifeline. With this newfound understanding, Amber and I decided to open our home to Jennifer and Harper. It was clear that they had nowhere else to go, and turning them away was not an option. Our focus shifted from the inconvenience of the situation to the necessity of providing support for someone in genuine need. Amber and I decided that Jennifer and Harper could stay with us for the time being. My problem was never with those two. It was that I had to take over for the deadbeat. Knowing the full context, I couldn't turn my back on them. They needed us. When we told Emma about this, she was super happy that her best friend was staying with her. We had a conversation with her, explaining that if she wanted to have time with either parent without Harper, she just needed to let us know. We assured her that we didn't want her to feel left out of anything. Last weekend, with the help of Hall and some friends, we got all of Jennifer's and Harper's stuff and moved it into our house. The good thing is we have a 4-bedroom house, so everyone gets a bedroom. The bad news is my wife's office moved to the basement, which isn't ideal but necessary under the circumstances. Wish me luck, we shall see how this goes. This situation is far from easy, but knowing the full story has given me a new perspective. We're doing the right thing by helping Jennifer and Harper, and hopefully, we'll come out of this stronger as a family. Update 2. Jen and Harper are still living with us. As I mentioned before, Jen did not make that much money. She worked as a phlebotomist for our local health network, which didn't pay well enough to support herself and Harper independently. Despite her dedication and hard work, the financial strain was a constant burden. The good news is that with the current nursing shortage, the health network introduced a program that pays for employees to go to nursing school. This opportunity was a lifeline for Jen. She was able to start the program at the end of August. It was a significant step forward for her, offering a chance to improve her financial situation and secure a better future for herself and Harper. However, the program came with its own set of challenges. It's an 18-month intensive course, and participants are only allowed to work 20 hours a week while enrolled. This meant that Jen's already tight finances would be stretched even thinner during this period. She would need to juggle studying, limited work hours, and caring for Harper, all while living with us. The arrangement we came to was that once Jen graduates, she will move out. This plan gave her a clear goal to work towards and provided a timeline for us as well. It's a challenging path, but the end result would be worth it. Jen's graduation is expected to be next May, which feels both far away and just around the corner. In the meantime, our household dynamics have to adapt to accommodate Jen's rigorous schedule. She spends most of her time either studying or working her reduced hours. It's a demanding routine, but she's incredibly determined and focused on making it through the program. The support system we provide is crucial, giving her the stability and peace of mind she needs to concentrate on her studies. We've all made adjustments to help Jen succeed. Amber and I take on additional responsibilities to ensure that Harper's needs are met and that Jen has the space and time to study. It's a team effort, and while it's not always easy, we all understand the importance of what Jen is working towards. The prospect of Jen becoming a nurse is a beacon of hope. It promises a better future for her and Harper, free from the financial insecurities that have plagued them. While the present situation is tough, the light at the end of the tunnel keeps us all motivated. We look forward to celebrating her graduation and the new opportunities it will bring for her family. In the meantime, the divorce with Deadbeat is still ongoing. Once he found out he was going to have to pay child support, he tried every dirty, nasty trick he could think of. It's been a nightmare for Jennifer, who already has enough on her plate with nursing school and caring for Harper. Deadbeat's tactics have ranged from delaying court proceedings to making false accusations against Jennifer. He's done everything he can to avoid his financial responsibilities, dragging out the process as long as possible. Each new trick he pulls seems designed to make Jennifer's life more difficult and stressful. For example, he's constantly failing to show up for court dates, forcing them to be rescheduled and prolonging the whole ordeal. He's also tried to claim that Jennifer is an unfit mother, despite having no evidence to back up his accusations. These claims are baseless, but they add emotional strain and complicate the legal proceedings. Every time Jennifer thinks she's made progress, Deadbeat throws another wrench into the works. It's exhausting and demoralizing, but she remains determined to see it through. She knows that getting the divorce finalized and securing child support is crucial for Harper's well-being and their future stability. The legal fees are piling up and the financial strain is intense, especially with Jennifer's reduced work hours due to nursing school. We do our best to support her emotionally and financially, but it's a heavy burden. The uncertainty of not knowing when the divorce will be finalized adds to the stress. Despite the challenges, Jennifer remains resolute. She's focused on her goals, completing nursing school, securing a stable income, and ensuring a better life for Harper. It's a difficult road, but she's not facing it alone. We're here to help her navigate the twists and turns of this prolonged and bitter divorce battle. It's a frustrating situation for all of us. The sooner the divorce is finalized, the sooner Jennifer and Harper can move forward without the shadow of Deadbeat looming over them. My wife is doing good. She is happy she is helping her best friend. However, having 5 people in the house is a lot more work than having 3. Since she works from home, the pre- and post-school work often falls on her. Despite the added workload, Amber remains positive and dedicated to making this arrangement work for everyone. Emma and Harper are still best friends, and their bond is as strong as ever. Shockingly, Harper is doing much better in this environment than before. The stability and support she receives here have had a noticeable positive impact on her. They don't do everything together anymore, which has allowed both girls to explore their individual interests. Harper quit dance class, but she started with soccer, which she really enjoys. I think knowing that she will get fatherly attention no matter what she is doing has given her some freedom to pursue other interests. It's heartwarming to see her confidence grow as she finds new activities that she loves. Interestingly, Harper has turned into my Lego buddy. Emma never had any interest in Legos, but Harper and I have done some nice sets together. This has become a special bonding activity for us. Building Legos not only provides a fun pastime, but also gives Harper the fatherly attention she has been missing. It's rewarding to see her enthusiasm and creativity flourish through our Lego projects. Amber and I work hard to balance our responsibilities and ensure that both Emma and Harper feel supported and loved. While the dynamics of our household have certainly changed, we're adapting and finding new ways to connect and spend quality time together. It's not always easy, but seeing the positive impact on Harper and the strong friendship between the girls makes it all worthwhile. Emma and I still have our daddy-daughter dates on the weekend. I still take her to dance class, and she recently started taking fencing classes. Watching her learn to fence has been both exciting and a little intimidating. I don't know if I should be proud or scared that she could defeat me in a sword fight one day. It's incredible to see her develop new skills and interests, and our time together remains special and cherished. A year later, I think I am doing better. Having a plan with a timetable for Jen and Harper has relieved a lot of stress from my life. Knowing that there is an end goal in sight helps me manage the day-to-day challenges more effectively. The fact that I also don't have to see Deadbeat has been a significant relief. His absence from our lives has removed a source of constant tension and frustration. I also try to take a few hours a month for myself to do my hobbies. These moments of me time are crucial for my mental well-being and help me recharge. Whether it's working on a personal project or just relaxing, these breaks are essential in maintaining my balance. The bad part is I had thought that I was done with the portion of my life where I had roommates. Adjusting to having more people in the house has been challenging. While we all get along and support each other, the lack of privacy and the constant activity can be overwhelming at times. It will be a relief when Jen either gets her nursing job and/or secures child support, so that Amber and I can stop footing the bill for so much. Despite the challenges, there have been many joyful moments. Watching Harper flourish in a supportive environment, seeing Emma and Harper's friendship grow, and even building Lego sets together, these small moments of happiness are precious. They remind me to appreciate the good amidst the difficult. In the midst of supporting others, I learned the importance of self-care. Taking time for my hobbies and personal interests has been crucial for maintaining my mental and emotional well-being. You can't pour from an empty cup. Taking care of myself enables me to better support my family. My best friend slept with my roommate who's about to get married. I couldn't keep this secret and chose to inform the roommate's fiancé, MITA. Living with my buddy Alex, who was about to get married, and hanging out with my best friend Ellie was usually the highlight of my days. I'm 26, pretty laid back, and have always kept things simple. Alex, 28, had everything figured out, especially with his wedding around the corner. He and his fiancée Sarah seemed perfect for each other, like something out of a romantic movie. Ellie's been my best friend since our college days. She's full of life, always laughing and making everyone around her feel better. We were like two peas in a pod, but in a completely brother-sister kind of way. She often came over to our place, making our apartment feel more alive. But then, things started to change. Ellie and Alex began to get a bit too close, more than what you'd expect from just friends. At first I told myself it was nothing. Friends get close, right? The revelation hit me like a freight train one evening, when the apartment was cloaked in silence, and the city outside buzzed with life, oblivious to the storm brewing within. I returned home earlier than expected, only to find Ellie and Alex entwined in a way that left no room for doubt. They were quick to separate, their faces flushed with guilt, but the damage was done. The image was seared into my memory, a haunting reminder of the betrayal. It was clear they had feelings for each other, and those feelings had crossed a line. Ever since I found Ellie and Alex, my best friend and roommate, closer than they should have been, my world's been upside down. I wanted to be loyal to both, but my head was a mess. On one hand, Alex was about to get married, and on the other, Ellie has always been like family to me. The apartment we shared, which was once full of jokes and late-night pizza runs, started feeling more like a silent movie. Conversations became whispers when I walked in, and the air felt thick with secrets. I noticed the small things, how they'd suddenly stop talking or how Ellie's visits became more scheduled, especially when I'd be out. It made my chest tight, thinking about it all. I decided to keep it all bottled up inside because, honestly, I didn't want to be the one to cause a hurricane in everyone's lives. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I ignored it long enough, things would go back to normal. I didn't want to be the reason anyone's happiness got ruined, even if it meant putting on a fake smile every day. For 3 whole months I lived in this bubble of hope and fear. Hope that Alex and Ellie would realize their mistake, and fear, what would happen if Sarah, Alex's fiancée, found out. It was like walking on a tightrope, trying to balance everything and pretend I was okay with it. Every day was a challenge, trying to act normal around Alex and Ellie. I dodged conversations about relationships, love, or anything that could lead back to the secret I was keeping. It felt like I was living in a different world from them, watching from the outside. I began to pull away, spending more time alone, avoiding coming home. I started making sure they knew when I was about to come home, sending a text or calling to say, "Hey, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I thought it would help me avoid walking in on more moments like that. However, even with all my warnings, it kept happening. Every time I saw them too close, it felt like a punch to the gut. I started to dread going home. My place, which used to be where I could relax, now felt like the last place I wanted to be. So, I stayed out as much as I could. I hung out in coffee shops, wandered around the library, and did anything to stay busy and away from the apartment. It was like I was trying to disappear from my own life because every time I thought about facing them, I just couldn't. It felt like everything around me reminded me of how things had changed and how uncomfortable I felt in my own home. I felt like I was stuck in a really tough spot. Here was my best friend and my roommate, who was about to get married, sneaking around. I kept their secret for 3 months, trying to ignore it and hoping it would just go away. But it ate at me. Sarah, Alex's fiancée, had no idea, and it didn't seem fair to her. The weight of knowing about Ellie and Alex became too much. I felt like I had to do something about it. It wasn't just about being loyal to Alex anymore, it was about doing what seemed right. Telling Sarah about what was happening with Alex and Ellie was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. It felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, knowing that what I was about to say could potentially ruin lives. But after months of carrying this secret, watching the strain it put on everyone involved, and feeling the weight of it crushing me, I knew it was something that had to be done. No matter how much I wished things could resolve themselves, the reality was clear. Sarah deserved to know the truth. Update. 3 months later, I decided to meet Sarah in a neutral place, somewhere public yet quiet enough for a serious conversation. I chose a small coffee shop in the park, a place that felt serene, hoping it would provide a calm backdrop for the storm I was about to unleash. I remember my hands shaking as I texted her, asking if she could meet me. I tried to sound casual, but every word felt heavy with the weight of what was to come. The day we met, I arrived early, my stomach in knots. As I waited, I rehearsed what I was going to say over and over, but the words felt inadequate. How do you tell someone their world isn't what they think it is? Sarah arrived, her smile bright, unaware of the news I was about to break. Seeing her happiness made what I was about to do even harder. I started the conversation with small talk, trying to ease into it. But how do you ease into something like this? Eventually, I just had to be straightforward. I told Sarah that there was something important I needed to talk to her about, something about Alex. I emphasized that what I was about to share was difficult for me, but I believed she had the right to know. Then, I told her. I explained that over the past few months, Alex and Ellie had grown closer, in a way that wasn't appropriate for two people who were just friends, especially when one of them was about to get married. I shared how I discovered them and the emotional turmoil I'd been through, deciding whether or not to tell her. I made it clear that my intention wasn't to hurt her but to be honest, because I believed she deserved the truth. Throughout the conversation, I watched Sarah's face change from confusion to shock, and then to something I couldn't quite decipher: hurt, maybe, or betrayal. She asked a few questions, her voice shaky, and I answered as honestly as I could, providing the details she sought. It was heartbreaking to see her process the information, to watch as the reality of the situation sank in. After telling her, I felt a mix of relief and dread. Relief that I had finally shared the secret that had been weighing me down, and dread for what it meant for Sarah, Alex, and Ellie. I offered Sarah my support, whatever decision she made about her future with Alex. I could tell she was shattered. I felt awful, but part of me knew it was better she heard it from me than someone else, or even worse, after the wedding. Walking away from that conversation was like leaving a part of myself behind. I knew things would never be the same after that, but I also knew I had done what I believed was right. It was a moment that changed the course of our lives, a decision made with a heavy heart but a clear conscience. The next few days were like walking through a minefield. Sarah confronted Alex, and the fallout was explosive. I wasn't there, but Alex made sure I knew he blamed me for everything. He came home that night, his face like thunder, and we had it out. "How could you?" he kept saying, over and over, like a broken record. I tried to explain my side, saying I couldn't just stand by and watch him make a mistake that big. But Alex wasn't having any of it. He saw it as the ultimate betrayal. Ellie, on the other hand, was a mix of angry and sad. She thought I had backstabbed them by not keeping their secret. Our friendship, once unbreakable, started showing cracks. She said she understood why I did it, but wished I hadn't. Our conversations became stiff, filled with awkward silences and unspoken words. It was clear things were never going back to how they were. The atmosphere at the apartment turned icy. Alex and I barely spoke, and when we did, it was just the essentials. It felt like I was living with a stranger, not the guy who had been my best friend. Ellie stopped coming over, and our group of friends picked up on the tension. Sides were taken, and suddenly, I found myself on the outside. It was like high school all over again, only lonelier. I started spending more time out of the apartment, staying late at work, wandering around the city, or sitting in parks just to avoid going home. The place I had loved, filled with so many good memories, now felt like a prison. The worst part was the isolation. Friends I thought I had in my corner slowly drifted away, unsure of how to navigate the new dynamics. The emotional toll was heavy. I struggled with guilt, wondering if I had made the right decision. Sleepless nights were common, and I found myself questioning not just my actions, but my judgment. Had I really done the right thing, or had I just destroyed relationships for the sake of my own conscience? Eventually, the situation at the apartment became unbearable. Alex decided he couldn't live with me anymore, and I couldn't blame him. The search for a new place was quick, I just wanted out. Moving out was a relief and a defeat all at once. It felt like I was running away, but I also knew staying wasn't an option. The day I left, the apartment was silent. Alex didn't help me move, and there were no goodbyes. It was a quiet end to a chapter of my life I had thought would last much longer. In the weeks that followed, the fallout continued. Sarah called off the wedding, and though she didn't blame me, our interactions were tinged with the sadness of what had happened. Alex and I lost touch completely, our brotherhood a casualty of the truth. Ellie and I tried to salvage our friendship, but it was like trying to piece together a broken vase. We could put it on the shelf, but it would never hold water again. Looking back, I wonder if things could have been different if I had stayed silent. But deep down, I know I couldn't have lived with myself. The price of honesty was high, and I paid it in friendships and heartache. But lying to myself and everyone else would have cost me even more. In the end, I learned that some truths are heavy, but carrying lies is heavier still. After the storm of revelations and the shifting sands of friendships lost, the days began to brighten for me. It wasn't immediate, the healing. It felt more like the slow bloom of spring after a harsh winter. I moved into a new apartment, a small but bright space that felt like a fresh start. In the solitude of my new surroundings, I found peace and, surprisingly, a sense of freedom I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The void left by old friendships made room for new ones. I dove into hobbies that I'd put on the back burner, joined a local soccer team, and even picked up guitar lessons. These activities brought me into circles I wouldn't have otherwise crossed, and through them, I met people who brought new perspectives and laughter back into my life. As for Ellie and Alex, time proved to be a great healer. Ellie reached out first, a tentative text that opened the door to reconciliation. Our friendship, once fractured, began to mend, not as it was but into something new, more mature. We acknowledged the past but chose to focus on the future, celebrating our new paths and supporting each other as we always had. Alex's journey took longer, but a chance encounter at a mutual friend's wedding brought us back into the same orbit. The initial awkwardness gave way to a heartfelt conversation, where apologies were exchanged, and forgiveness was granted. It was a reminder that while friendships can break under the weight of secrets, they can also rebuild, stronger in the broken places. My career took an unexpected but welcome turn when I was offered a position at a startup. The work was challenging but rewarding, and it came with the added bonus of travel, allowing me to see parts of the world I had only dreamed of. On one of these trips, I met Maya, a fellow traveler with a thirst for adventure and a kindness that drew me in. Our connection was instant, and what started as a shared journey through foreign lands blossomed into a partnership I had longed for but never found. Years down the line, as I reflect on the tumultuous period that reshaped my life, I see it not as a time of loss but as a crucible that forged my character and my future. Ellie, Alex and I, though forever changed by the events, found a way to coexist in each other's lives, a testament to the enduring strength of true friendship. And with Maya by my side, exploring the world and building a life together, I am reminded that sometimes, the hardest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations. Happiness, I learned, isn't the absence of pain or conflict but the resilience to move through it and find joy on the other side. My story, once marked by betrayal and heartache, is now a narrative of growth, forgiveness, and new beginnings. And for that, I am profoundly grateful. Finally, I want to extend my sincerest thanks to all of you who have taken the time to share your stories on Reddit. Please continue to journey with us, share your experiences, and together, let's create memorable moments. Am I the A? I had a one-night stand and she was 8 weeks pregnant. Accidentally, she was my wife's customer. As I reflect on the events that led up to that fateful evening, it's hard not to feel a twinge of what can only be described as predestined irony. My life at that time, though outwardly stable and content, was a carousel of routine and predictability. I was a project manager at a mid-sized ad agency, a job that provided me with a comfortable living but seldom sparked the passion I once had for my career. Each project blended into the next, each deadline just another date on the calendar. Married for 7 years, Ellie and I had settled into the kind of companionship that was comfortable but, if I'm being honest, increasingly devoid of spark. She was a boutique owner, a career she fell into through a blend of passion for fashion and serendipity. Her store, Ellie's Threads, nestled in the heart of downtown, had become a sanctuary not just for fashion enthusiasts, but for anyone seeking a personal touch both in service and style. Ellie had a knack for making every customer feel like the only person in the room, which explained why her clientele kept growing mostly by word of mouth. Ellie loved her work, and I admired her for it. Her face would light up with every story she shared about her customers. There was genuine excitement in her voice that I hadn't heard in mine for a long time when talking about my own day-to-day life. Perhaps it was this growing disparity in our professional satisfactions that first wedged a sliver of disconnect between us. She was flourishing, vibrant, and I felt like I was just there, going through the motions, watching the days tick by. It was a Thursday evening when it happened. Ellie was hosting a late-night sale event, something she had been planning for weeks. The excitement had bubbled over at breakfast that morning, her eyes sparkling as she laid out her plans for the displays and special discounts. I remember nodding, inserting the occasional "sounds great, honey," into the flow of her enthusiastic chatter, all the while sipping my coffee and feeling an inexplicable hollowness inside. Work that day was more of the same, drowning in emails and phone calls. As the clock neared 6, a coworker, Dan, popped his head into my office. "Grab a drink?" he suggested with a shrug. The idea was not just appealing, it felt like a lifeline. Ellie wouldn't be home until late, and the thought of another evening alone with my thoughts wasn't particularly enticing. The bar was typical for our city, dim lighting, a hum of conversations blending into a sort of soothing white noise, the occasional clink of glasses. We found a spot at the bar, and I texted Ellie that I'd be out for drinks and not to wait up. She replied with a heart emoji and a quick, "Good luck with Dan's stories," which managed to pull a brief smile from me. Dan was in the middle of a particularly animated tale about a client when she walked in. Alone, she took a seat a few stools down from us. Something about her was immediately captivating, not just her appearance, but the air of confidence she exuded. She ordered a drink and caught me looking her way. I turned back to Dan, chiding myself for the wandering eye, but curiosity got the better of me. As the evening wore on and Dan's stories became more about his ex-wife than our clients, my attention drifted. I found myself ordering another drink, alone this time, as Dan had left with a shake of his hand and a pat on the back. Now with space beside me, she moved over, commenting lightly on the quality of the cocktails here as opposed to some other place she knew downtown. We started talking, and it was surprisingly easy. She was visiting from out of town, here on a short business trip. There was an ease to our conversation that I hadn't felt in a long time, a mutual understanding that seemed to click into place without effort. She laughed at my jokes, and I found myself genuinely intrigued by her stories of places she'd visited and the people she'd met. The bar's ambient music faded into a subtle backdrop as our conversation deepened. Her name was Mara. She had an air of someone who had navigated many cities, yet she carried no airs about her travels. Instead, she shared her experiences with a kind of earnestness that was both refreshing and disarming. Each story she told was punctuated by her laughter, a sound that seemed to resonate just at the right frequency to shake me from my usual reserve. As we talked, the initial casualness of our exchange slowly peeled away to reveal a more profound connection. We discussed everything from favorite books and films to our personal philosophies on life and the inevitable question of what happiness truly meant to each of us. Mara had a way of speaking that made you want to listen, her words thoughtful, her demeanor calm yet full of a passionate energy. It was this energy that drew me in, deeper and deeper, into a dialogue that felt as if it was set apart from the rest of the world. The bar began to thin out, the night getting late, but neither of us made any motion to leave. My phone buzzed intermittently, a reminder of the life I had momentarily stepped away from, but each notification seemed less and less important as the night drew on. I told myself that this was just a conversation, just two people talking, nothing more. But deep down, I knew it was edging into something else, something I hadn't planned but perhaps subconsciously desired. Mara's presence filled the space around us with an intoxicating blend of curiosity and mystery. As she shared a particularly touching story about a sunrise she witnessed in Machu Picchu, I realized I was leaning in, captivated not just by her words but by her essence. It was a moment of vulnerability, one that didn't go unnoticed. She paused, a soft smile playing on her lips, her eyes locking with mine in a silent acknowledgement of the shift between us. "It's getting late," she finally said, her voice a soft contrast to the fading music. "I should probably head back to my hotel." The statement hung between us, a polite end to an unexpected evening. Yet neither of us moved. The connection, now palpably thick, seemed to hold us there. It was then that I wrestled with my conscience, a silent debate raging within me. I was a married man. I had responsibilities, a partner who trusted me. What was I doing? But then another voice whispered, justifying the pull I felt. Ellie was busy with her life, absorbed in her passions. Was it so wrong for me to find a moment of escapism? Was it so harmful to feel alive, just for one night? Mara stood up, breaking our gaze. "This was really nice," she said, gathering her things. I stood too, driven by an impulse I couldn't quite quell. "Let me walk you to your hotel," I offered, my voice steady despite the inner turmoil. The walk was short, the city's night sounds surrounding us, yet the silence between us spoke volumes. Each step felt like a decision, each breath a silent question of what I was doing. When we reached the lobby of her hotel, the finality of the evening loomed before us, yet neither of us seemed ready to let it end. "Would you like to come up for a coffee?" she asked, her invitation casual but loaded with unspoken implications. The weight of the decision pressed down on me, heavy and undeniable. This was the point of no return. I knew what my answer should be, what it would be any other night. But that night, driven by a loneliness I hadn't admitted to myself and a connection that felt almost fated, I broke. "Sure," I said, a part of me surrendering to the night, to the escape, to Mara. It was nearing midnight when we left the bar. The night was crisp, the streets bathed in the orange glow of street lamps. Somehow the decision of what came next didn't need much discussion. It felt like a mutual, unspoken agreement. We ended up at her hotel, a decision that, in the moment, carried a thrill I hadn't felt in years. The elevator ride to her floor was a blur of mixed emotions. Each floor ascended marked a step further away from the life I knew, from the person I was. When we entered her room, the reality of our actions set in fully. This was no longer just conversation and hypotheticals, it was real, tangible. The next several hours were filled with a flurry of desire and introspection, with a twinge of guilt accompanying each moment of connection. My internal conflict was exacerbated by Mara's kindness, compassion, and lack of expectations. Reality started to creep back in as the night gave way to the first hints of morning, bringing remorse and realization to the experience. Looking back, I recognized the recklessness of it all. It was an escape, a brief moment of stupidity driven by resentment and the privacy the evening provided. But the gravity of my deeds hit as daylight drew near, and I made my way from the motel to the solitude of my home. When I got there, Ellie was still asleep, not realizing the storm that was building quietly above us. A storm sparked by a night that was intended to be meaningless, but ended up being anything but ordinary. The weeks following my indiscretion passed with a deceptive calm that belied the turmoil within me. Meanwhile, Ellie seemed more energized than ever by her work. One evening as we settled into a rare quiet moment after dinner, she began talking animatedly about a new customer, Mara, who had quickly become more of a friend than a client. "She's just moved here, doesn't really know anyone yet, so I thought maybe we could have her over for dinner," Ellie suggested. Her eyes sparkled with the prospect of playing host to a new friend, and I found myself nodding in agreement, eager to support anything that made her happy. Accordingly, the following Saturday, Ellie busied herself with preparations, her excitement palpable. As for me, I oscillated between helping her and trying to quiet the persistent voice of guilt in my mind. The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my reverie. I opened the door, and time seemed to stop. There stood Mara, the woman from that night, her eyes wide with equal shock. The air thickened with unspoken recognition. Ellie, oblivious to the silent exchange, swept in with a warm welcome. "Mara, I'm so glad you could make it. And this is my husband, Mark." The introduction forced a facade of normalcy, and I extended a hand, the contact sending a shiver of panic through me. Dinner unfolded like a play where the actors knew their lines too well. Mara was polite, engaging in conversation, yet our eyes occasionally met, heavy with the secrets we carried. Moreover, during a lull in the conversation, Ellie mentioned, "Mara's expecting. Can you believe it? It's been about 8 weeks already." She beamed, her delight in sharing her friend's news evident. My heart plummeted into my stomach. 8 weeks. The timing was damning, the implication clear. Mara caught my gaze, her expression unreadable. The weight of the situation pressed down on me, suffocating. After dinner, I found myself mechanically helping Ellie clean up, my mind racing with the evening's revelations. Mara had excused herself to the bathroom, and Ellie, humming happily, remarked, "She's wonderful, isn't she? I think she's going to fit right in here." I murmured in agreement, my voice hollow to my ears. The irony that Mara was integrating into our lives in more ways than one was not lost on me. When Mara returned, Ellie suggested we move to the living room for coffee. There, amidst the casual chatter about neighborhood amenities and local events, I excused myself to fetch something from the kitchen, and Mara followed shortly after. Alone, we faced each other, an awkward silence stretching between us. "I didn't know you were," I began, unable to finish the sentence. Mara looked down at her hands, then back up at me. "I found out after our night," she said quietly. "I'm keeping the baby. It's something I've always wanted, and it feels like the right time." Her voice was steady, her decision clear. I felt as if the room was closing in on me. "Does this change? I mean, does Ellie need to know?" I stumbled over the words, fear threading through each syllable. Mara shook her head slightly. "I don't see why she needs to know about us. This baby. It's mine. And I'm not asking anything of you." She spoke with a finality that left little room for argument, yet the enormity of keeping such a secret from Ellie weighed heavily on me. Returning to the living room, I was quieter than before, lost in thought over the right course of action. Mara soon made her excuses and left, the door closing softly behind her, echoing like a quiet judgment on my actions. That night, as Ellie and I lay in bed, her contented sighs contrasted sharply with the storm of anxiety and guilt raging within me. The secret I carried was now twofold, complicated further by the impending arrival of a child that might be mine. The fear of losing Ellie, the life we built together, and the respect she had for me battled with my conscience, urging me to come clean. Nevertheless, despite my best efforts to justify myself, none of them seemed sufficient to bridge the gap that had appeared in my life overnight. The choice of whether to reveal or keep quiet hovered over me like a pendulum, ready to swing at any time and have disastrous effects. The next day with my couple, as Mara excused herself from the dinner table, claiming a need to freshen up, the silence she left behind was deafening. Ellie chatted about her plans for expanding her boutique, her words floating over me like a distant melody. My mind, however, was trapped in a vice of fear and guilt, fixated on the brief, intense exchange I'd had with Mara in the kitchen. Returning to the living room, Ellie was animated, discussing community events and possible collaborations with local artisans. Mara rejoined us, her demeanor calm, betraying none of the storm that had just unfolded between us. She listened intently, nodding and smiling at appropriate intervals, but her eyes occasionally flicked my way, a silent reminder of the conversation that was far from over. After dessert, Ellie suggested we enjoy some coffee on the back porch. The night was clear, the stars a tapestry of light against the dark sky. The casual setting did little to ease the tension I felt. Mara excused herself early, citing a long day ahead. Ellie, understanding as always, walked her to the door with promises to catch up soon. Left alone, the weight of the evening pressed uncomfortably around me. The house was quiet after Ellie returned, the soft clink of her placing the coffee cups in the sink echoing through the stillness. She sensed my unease. "Is everything okay? You've been quiet tonight," she inquired, her voice laced with concern. "I think we need to talk," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt heavy, each one a step towards an abyss I was terrified to confront. Ellie turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her expression shifting to one of apprehension. "What's wrong?" I led her to the living room, gesturing for her to sit. My legs felt like lead as I paced in front of her, each step a Herculean effort. Tonight was hard. "Mara, she's not just a customer, Ellie." Ellie's brow furrowed, confusion and worry mingling in her eyes. "What do you mean?" I stopped pacing, facing her, the truth clawing at the edge of my tongue. "A few weeks ago, I met someone at a bar. It was just once, but it was a mistake. A big mistake," I confessed, my voice cracking under the strain of my confession. Ellie's face was drained of color. "And Mara is?" I nodded, the admission feeling like a physical blow. "Yes, she's the woman from that night. And she's pregnant, Ellie. 8 weeks. The room spun as I watched the impact of my words hit her. Ellie stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the wood floor. "How could you?" Her voice was a whisper, but it bore the weight of a scream. "I'm so sorry, Ellie. It was a moment of weakness, a terrible mistake. Mara said the baby is hers and she doesn't want anything from me. She wasn't supposed to be anyone we knew." Ellie wrapped her arms around herself, as if holding together the pieces of her shattered security. "And you thought you'd just keep this from me? Live a lie?" I shook my head, desperate to explain, to make her see the remorse that was eating me alive. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought it would destroy everything. I thought. You thought what? That it's okay to betray me? That I wouldn't find out? Her voice rose, each word edged with hurt and disbelief. I don't know, Ellie. I was scared. I still am. I don't want to lose you. My own voice was ragged, strained with the fear of the very real possibility of losing her. Ellie sank back into the chair, her eyes staring blankly ahead, not really seeing the room or me. I need some time to think about this, to understand how I feel. I need you to give me some space right now. Of course, I replied, my heart sinking as the distance between us expanded with her words. Take all the time you need. I'm here when you're ready to talk. She didn't respond, and I retreated to our bedroom, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Lying in our bed, I stared at the ceiling, wrestling with the enormity of what I'd done. The silence of the house was oppressive, each creak and whisper of wind a reminder of the fragility of the life I'd built with Ellie. Confessing had lifted a weight, but it had also set in motion a series of events that I could no longer control. Ellie's trust in me was shattered, and whether it could be rebuilt remained a question mark hanging over us, dense and foreboding. The guilt of my betrayal, now fully disclosed, was a specter that would haunt the corners of our home, perhaps indefinitely. As I lay there, the hours stretching into a sleepless expanse, I realized that coming clean was only the first step. The journey to possibly mending our relationship, if Ellie could ever forgive me, was likely to be long and fraught with challenges. However, I had no choice but to follow this road since I still loved her, and I hoped that one day she would feel the same way about me. The longest night of my life was the one I spent admitting to Ellie. With each silent minute that went by, I felt the distance between us grow as I laid in our bed next to her. She had her back to me, and although we were only a few inches apart, she appeared very far away. My heart raced with a mix of relief at being able to share my secret and fear for the days that lay ahead. The silence in the room contrasted sharply with the disarray in my head. Morning brought no solace. Ellie was up before dawn, her movements around the bedroom deliberate and quiet, avoiding any unnecessary interaction. At breakfast, the air was thick with things unsaid. She poured coffee with a mechanical precision, her eyes fixed on the task, not once meeting mine. The clink of the spoon against the cup echoed like a siren in the tense silence. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but cold. I've been thinking all night. I don't know if I can get past this, Mark. But I need something from you if I'm even going to consider it. Her words hung heavy between us. What do you need? I asked, my voice hoarse, bracing for her conditions. I want you to talk to Mara. I want the pregnancy to be dealt with. It's the only way I might forgive this. The only way we might have a chance. Her eyes met mine then, filled with a tumultuous mix of pain and determination because she wanted Mara to have an abortion. The condition hit me harder than I anticipated. The idea of influencing Mara's decision about her pregnancy was a line I had never imagined crossing. Yet the alternative was losing Ellie, the thought of which was unbearable. I'll talk to her, I murmured, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Ellie nodded, her expression unreadable, and left for work without another word. The day stretched out interminably. I was haunted by Ellie's condition, my thoughts, a tangle of ethical dilemmas and personal desires. By the time I called Mara, my voice was barely more than a whisper, laden with the weight of the situation. Mara's reaction was as expected, shocked and hurt. I can't believe you'd even suggest this, after assuring me it was my choice, she said, her voice tight with emotion. The conversation was brief, and she hung up with a definitive, I'm keeping the baby, Mark. You don't get to have a say in this. The finality of her decision left me reeling. I had to return to Ellie with nothing to offer but the truth. That evening, as we sat across from each other in our living room, the distance between us felt insurmountable. I spoke to Mara, I started, the heaviness of my failure bearing down on me. She's made her decision. She's keeping the baby. I couldn't persuade her otherwise. Ellie's reaction was a complex tapestry of anger, sadness, and resignation. So, that's it then, she said quietly, her voice quivering slightly. You've really done it, haven't you? Ruined everything we had for a moment of, what? Excitement? Escape? I had no answers that could soothe the wounds, no words that could mend the broken trust. I'm so sorry, Ellie. I never wanted any of this. I was selfish, and I've hurt you beyond what I can ever repair. But I love you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right, if you'll let me. Ellie shook her head, a tear escaping down her cheek. I need time, Mark. I need space to think about what I want, about what's best for me. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way. I don't know if I want to. The following weeks were a blur of tension and tentative interactions. Ellie moved into the guest room, and our conversations were brief, limited to necessities. I respected her need for space, all the while grappling with my remorse and the fallout of my actions. I researched therapists, arranged counseling sessions for myself, and left notes for Ellie, each one an apology, a plea for a chance to rebuild. Slowly we started attending couples therapy. Each session was emotionally charged, a painful unpacking of years of neglected issues and recent betrayals. Ellie's pain was palpable, and each word she spoke about her hurt was a dagger to my heart. I went through a whirlwind of emotions throughout this period. I was scared of losing Ellie all the time and was overcome with remorse. I continued to attempt to make things right even though it seemed like a lot would never be enough since I still loved her. I clung to the belief that we could mend our relationship and get back together if we were open, honest, and patient. I was prepared for the difficult road ahead, no matter how long it took, to mend Ellie's relationship. After I told Ellie the truth, we were both confused and upset about what came next. To help us, we started having regular meetings with a counselor. It made us see things more clearly, but it was also really hard. Every week we started to see how we hadn't been talking to each other properly, and there were things we were both angry about but never said. The lady counselor was kind but also straightforward. She helped us talk about tough topics, like whether we should push Mara to make a certain choice about her pregnancy. Ellie was torn emotionally and morally, and she wasn't sure what to think. She asked her friends, her family, and even people on the internet for advice. The advice she got was all different and seemed to confuse her more. I could tell just by looking at her that it was tough on her. After much thinking, Ellie decided not to interfere with Mara's decisions. Meanwhile, Ellie's work life needed her attention too. Mara was not just a client now, but she frequently visited Ellie's boutique. I saw how Ellie handled this professionally, despite the personal feelings she had. She kept her feelings separate from her work and treated Mara kindly. This was a clear sign of Ellie's strength and good character. I felt a mix of sadness and pride watching her. Ellie suggested a temporary break about 6 months after I was honest with her. The decision broke our hearts, but Ellie thought it was the best thing to do. I moved to an apartment a few blocks away and we had some rules for how we would communicate. These included regular check-ins, therapy sessions, as well as time to be alone and heal. During this separation, I faced the consequences of my actions. I had hurt Ellie, disrupted Mara's life, and affected all of our futures. I spent my alone time reading about trust, speaking with the counselor by myself, and writing in a journal. It made me really confront who I needed to become. As the separation neared its 1-year mark, one rainy afternoon, as we met for coffee in a quiet cafe, Ellie broached the subject I had been dreading. The sound of the rain tapping against the window provided a somber backdrop to our conversation. "Mark, I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice steady but with an undeniable gravity. "This year apart has given me a lot of clarity, and as much as it pains me to say this, I don't think I can move past what happened. I don't feel the same about us anymore." Her words hung in the air, heavy with finality. The future I had been tentatively hopeful for crumbled in an instant. "I think it's best if we start thinking about divorce," she continued. "I need to start a new chapter for myself. One where I don't have to constantly fight shadows of the past." The shock of her decision hit me with overwhelming force. Despite our efforts and the faint hope that we might reconcile fully, the reality was starkly different. Ellie's expression was one of resolve, tinged with sadness. She had wrestled with this decision, and her conclusion was not made lightly. The shock of her decision hit me with overwhelming force. Despite our efforts and the faint hope that we might reconcile fully, the reality was starkly different. Ellie's expression was one of resolve, tinged with sadness. She had wrestled with this decision, and her conclusion was not made lightly. "I understand," I managed to say, though my voice was thick with emotion. "I hate that it's come to this, but I respect your decision. You deserve happiness, Ellie, even if it's not with me." Moving forward was tough but important. We had deep talks about how to split up fairly and by the law, taking into account the property we owned together and the life we had built. Ellie clearly wanted to make the process as easy as possible, showing that in spite of everything, we still respected each other. Returning home after our conversation felt different. The apartment was no longer just a temporary space but a symbol of the finality of our split. I found myself reflecting deeply on the consequences of my actions. The pain I had caused Ellie, the disruption to Mara's life, and the end of what had once been a promising marriage were all results of my poor choices. We made a point to continue therapy even if not as often, and Ellie went back to focusing on her boutique. Ellie and Mara were not close again, but they still had a professional relationship until Mara moved for work. During the ensuing months, as we navigated the divorce proceedings, I continued my personal therapy sessions. These became crucial for me to understand my actions better and to learn from them. I explored topics of trust, commitment, and personal growth extensively, committed to never repeating the same mistakes. The process of our divorce came to an end quietly, and without any disagreements. Ellie and I said goodbye with deep sadness, but we also respected each other. We both changed because of what happened. Ellie was more dedicated to forge her own way in life now, while I was left to make sense of the past and rebuild my future, now knowing more about myself and the importance of being honest and faithful. Though those were difficult lessons, I was in need of them. I discovered that true love requires more than just liking someone. It also requires honesty, respect, and a level of dedication that I was unable to provide when it meant most. Even though our divorce was finalized when the papers were signed, that moment will always serve as a reminder of the costs of treachery, and the arduous process of putting things right later. As I look back, I realize I learned a lot. I figured out how fragile trust is, and how hard it is to rebuild once it's broken. Faithfulness and truthfulness are not just words, they are about what you actually do constantly. Now more than ever, I understand how much a relationship needs open and direct communication. Going through this tough time has changed me. I'm not the same person who made the mistake and risked everything important. Instead, I've become a more conscious, more cautious, and more resolute person because of this experience. Even though Ellie and I went through a terrible situation, and we can't predict what's going to happen in the future, we promise to face it together, showing our love, strength, and the silent promise to honor the vows that we once took lightly. Years have passed since Ellie and I finalized our divorce, and life has marched on in ways I never anticipated. Ellie has thrived in her independence. Her boutique, Ellie's Threads, has expanded into an online platform, blending her keen fashion sense with an intuitive grasp of digital marketing. She's become a well-respected figure in the local business community, frequently invited to speak at events and seminars. Last I heard, she remains single, dedicating herself to her career and personal growth. Her success is a testament to her resilience and strength, qualities that I always admired, even more so now from a distance. As for myself, the journey has been one of profound introspection and change. Following our separation, Mara and I tried to co-parent, a decision born from necessity rather than romance. Our son, now a curious and energetic toddler, is a constant reminder of the consequences of my actions. Mara and I are not together. Our relationship is strictly platonic, focused solely on raising our child in a stable and loving environment. This arrangement has taught me more about responsibility and commitment than I ever learned before. Lessons that I deeply value. I've continued to work in the same company but with a new perspective on my career and personal life. The ordeal forced me to reassess not just my personal relationships but also my professional life. I've taken steps to ensure that my work is fulfilling not just on a financial level but also enriches my life and aligns with my values. My days are a blend of work, fatherhood, and continuous learning, with an emphasis on personal integrity and transparency. The impact of my past actions still reverberates through the lives of those I care about. The pain I caused Ellie is something I carry with me every day. It serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the importance of honesty. With Mara, our relationship has evolved into one of mutual respect and teamwork, as we navigate the challenges and joys of parenting. Reflecting on everything, the greatest lesson has been understanding the ripple effect of one's actions. The choices I made not only altered the course of my life, but also affected the lives of Ellie, Mara, and most importantly, our son. This awareness has reshaped how I approach every decision, every relationship, and how I live my life day to day. As I think about what's ahead, I plan to be someone my son can depend on and admire. I want to teach him important values like being honest, accepting our weaknesses, and being good and fair, through the way I behave. Life continues to teach me new things through its many complications and difficulties. I'm thankful for the lessons I've learned from messing up and the opportunity to correct them little by little each day. The path I'm on is not over yet, but I am dedicated to continue it while being real and mindful. I hope to fix the past and work towards a better future for everyone affected. Edit. As someone who listened to the story and was allowed to upload it on this channel, I also asked for permission to comment on his story at the end. Honestly, he is someone who should be rejected from this life, LOL. It's impossible to cause such a thing and just say a few words to ease his feelings. The way he stood from afar, watching his wife develop and shouldering everything alone, made me feel so sorry. I admire Ellie. If you have the same opinion as me, comment number 1 or yes and no number 0, then add your personal opinion. I am sure that the owner of this article will read and update it regularly. Thank you everyone, for listening until now and always enjoying the stories on my channel. Kiss kiss. My best friend confessed his feelings to me. I rejected him because I already had a crush on someone else. In response, he became hostile, spitefully speaking of both me and the guy I liked. Unable to bear the criticism, the boy I liked abandoned me. Ever since we were kids, Jake and I had been inseparable. We met in elementary school, bonded over our mutual dislike for the cafeteria's mystery meat, and from there, a friendship blossomed that seemed unbreakable. We shared secrets, homework answers, and countless inside jokes. As we entered high school, our worlds grew larger, but our bond remained solid, or so I thought. Jake was the kind of friend everyone wished they had. He was reliable, funny, and always there when you needed him. So, when he asked me to meet up at our favorite local diner one chilly evening in October, I didn't think much of it. It was our go-to spot for celebrating good grades, nursing broken hearts, and plotting future adventures. That night, I figured he wanted to talk about his latest video game obsession or maybe vent about his parents, who were on his case again about college applications. But as I slid into the booth across from him, something felt off. Jake was nervous, fidgeting with the napkin dispenser, avoiding eye contact. I teased him, asking if he'd finally decided to confess his undying love for Mrs. Peterson, our eccentric but endearing English teacher. He gave a half-hearted chuckle but quickly grew serious again. The casual chit-chat felt heavier as we danced around the usual topics. Finally, Jake blurted out that he needed to tell me something important. I leaned in, expecting another one of his grand plans for a summer road trip, or maybe a complaint about his younger sister. What he said next, though, left me speechless. Jake confessed that he had feelings for me. Not just the kind of fleeting crushes we'd laughed about over the years, but real, deep feelings. He'd been holding on to them for a while, he said, afraid of what admitting them might do to our friendship. I sat there, my heart pounding, my mind racing. This was Jake, my best friend since the 3rd grade. The thought of him seeing me in that way had never crossed my mind. Sure, I cared about him deeply, but only as a friend. And there was another reason I couldn't return his feelings. I had a crush on someone else, a guy from my art class named Tyler, who was 20 and had the most amazing talent for photography. Rejecting Jake was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I tried to let him down gently, explaining my feelings for Tyler and how I didn't want to ruin the special friendship Jake and I shared. But as the words left my mouth, I saw the hurt flash across his face, quickly masked by a forced smile and a shrug. We left the diner that night with a promise to remain friends, but the air between us had shifted. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, and not for the better. Little did I know, that conversation would be the turning point, marking the end of our friendship as we knew it. In the days following Jake's confession and my subsequent rejection, I noticed a subtle but unmistakable shift in our dynamic. At first, Jake tried to act like nothing had changed, keeping up his usual banter and meeting me for our routine hangouts. However, the effortless ease that once defined our friendship was replaced by a tense undercurrent of awkwardness that neither of us could ignore. I threw myself into my art class, finding solace in my sketches and the company of Tyler, whose presence became increasingly comforting. Tyler, with his quiet confidence and shared love for the arts, was a stark contrast to the complicated situation with Jake. As my feelings for Tyler grew, so did my guilt over Jake. I was caught between the burgeoning possibility of something new, and the deterioration of something once solid. Meanwhile, Jake's hurt began to manifest in ways I hadn't anticipated. It started with small digs, veiled as jokes, about Tyler's age and his artistic ambitions. I tried to brush them off, attributing them to Jake's struggle to adjust to our new normal. But as the weeks passed, his comments grew more pointed, and I learned from mutual friends that Jake was spreading rumors about Tyler and me. He painted me as someone who led him on, only to discard him for someone else. The tipping point came when I confronted Jake about the rumors. He denied everything at first, but as I pressed, insisting that our friends wouldn't lie about such things, he exploded. He accused me of being insensitive to his feelings, of not considering how hard it was for him to see me with Tyler. The conversation ended in a heated argument, with both of us saying things we couldn't take back. Jake stormed off, leaving me standing alone, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of loss. In the aftermath, our friendship group became polarized. Some sided with Jake, believing I had been unfair to him, while others stood by me, upset by how he was handling his hurt. The division made social gatherings awkward, and I found myself withdrawing, spending more time with Tyler and less with the group I had grown up with. Tyler, for his part, was supportive but understandably frustrated by the drama. He hadn't signed up for a high school feud, and the tension began to affect our budding relationship. I found myself defending him constantly, trying to dispel the lies Jake had spread, all while navigating my own tangled emotions. The strain was palpable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was to blame for the unraveling of my once unbreakable bond with Jake. As the weeks turned into months, the situation didn't improve. Jake's behavior became more erratic, his hostility more pronounced. Attempts at reconciliation fell flat, with Jake shutting down any effort I made to mend our friendship. It was as if the rejection had flipped a switch in him, turning the once kind-hearted and loyal friend into someone I hardly recognized. Caught in this storm of emotions and conflict, I struggled to find my footing. My grades began to suffer, my artwork lost its joy, and the shadow of my fractured friendship with Jake loomed large over everything. The realization that I might never get my friend back was a bitter pill to swallow, compounded by the fear of losing Tyler too, to the chaos Jake had created. In the heart of the turmoil, a rumor that Jake had started about me being a two-timer, an insinuation that I was leading multiple guys on, was the final straw. The phrase, so juvenile yet laden with judgment, spread through our circle with surprising speed, tainting the image I had worked so hard to maintain as someone straightforward and sincere in my dealings. Confronting Jake about this particular rumor was harder than anything I'd faced before. The air between us crackled with tension as I approached him, my heart hammering against my ribcage, anger and hurt battling for dominance. The accusation was not just a blow to my reputation, it felt like a direct attack on my character, and from someone who had known me better than anyone else. "Jake, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing inside me. He looked at me, the flicker of defiance in his eyes quickly masked by a semblance of indifference. "About what?" he asked, though the guilty shift in his gaze told me he knew exactly what the issue was. "About what you've been saying, about me being a fisherman." I spat the word out like it was poison. "You know that's not true. You know me." For a moment, there was a flash of the old Jake, the one who would have never entertained the thought of hurting me, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a cold, hard mask. "Maybe I thought I did," he said, his voice laced with bitterness. "But I guess people change, or maybe they just reveal who they really are." The conversation spiraled from there, voices raised, words we could never take back hurled like weapons. The hurt from his rejection, the frustration with my feelings for Tyler, and the pain of watching our friendship disintegrate exploded into a cacophony of anger and betrayal. In the end, there were no winners, just two people standing amidst the wreckage of a friendship that had once meant everything. As the days passed and the storm of rumors refused to calm, Tyler and I found ourselves increasingly caught in the eye of public scrutiny. Despite our efforts to ignore the whispers and stares, the weight of public opinion began to take its toll. Tyler, who had always moved through life with a certain ease, found himself ill-equipped to handle the constant barrage of judgment and speculation. One evening, as we sat in the dim light of my small studio apartment, surrounded by my latest artworks, the tension that had been building between us finally reached its breaking point. Tyler, his usually calm demeanor frayed at the edges, voiced the fear and frustration that had been brewing in silence. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying the weight of a final verdict. "It's not just about us anymore, it's about this circus around us. I thought I could handle it, but I can't." I tried to reach out to him, to bridge the gap that had suddenly yawned wide open between us, but my words felt hollow even to my own ears. The rumors, Jake's spiteful campaign, had poisoned what was pure and beautiful between us, turning it into something fraught and fragile. "It's not true, any of it. You know me, Tyler. You know who I am," I pleaded, desperation threading through my voice. But doubt, once planted, is a difficult thing to eradicate. Tyler looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw the struggle, the desire to believe, battling the weariness of constant defense. "I know," he said, and in those two words was a world of sorrow. "But knowing isn't enough. It's like we're fighting ghosts. Your past, the rumors, the looks. I'm tired, and I just can't." With that, he stood up, and with every step he took away from me, the future I had envisioned with him crumbled into dust. I watched him leave, a part of me screaming to run after him, to fight for us, but another part, exhausted and resigned, held me back. In the aftermath of Tyler's departure, I found myself adrift. The art that had once been my refuge now echoed the emptiness I felt inside. The canvas remained blank, mirroring the void where inspiration used to flourish. I had lost Jake, my best friend, because of a truth I had stood by, and now I had lost Tyler, the one I loved, to lies I had no control over. The journey from that point was slow and solitary. I learned to find solace in the silence, to appreciate the solitude that allowed me to reflect and heal. My art evolved, no longer just an escape but a way to process and to express the myriad emotions that the ordeal had stirred within me. As the final chapter of this turbulent period of my life came to a close, I found myself alone, grappling with a pain so profound it threatened to consume me entirely. Tyler's departure had left a void in my life that seemed insurmountable, a constant reminder of the cost of truth and the destructive power of rumors. The absence of his presence, once a source of joy and inspiration, now felt like a wound that refused to heal. The studio apartment, once filled with laughter and the promise of shared dreams, echoed with the silence of loss. My art, a reflection of my inner turmoil, became darker, the strokes on the canvas more frantic, as if trying to exorcise the demons of betrayal and abandonment. In the depths of my despair I reached out, seeking solace in the shared wisdom of others who had navigated the treacherous waters of heartbreak and emerged on the other side. I poured my heart out on forums, in letters to unseen friends, and in late-night conversations with anyone who would listen. The question that burned within me was simple yet profound. How do you move forward when the past clings to you like a shadow? And so, I stand at the crossroads of my own making, drowning in a pain that is both a burden and a teacher. I reach out to you, to anyone who has felt the sting of betrayal, the ache of lost love, and the weight of a world turned upside down. How did you find your way back to the surface? How did you learn to breathe again, to find joy in the sunrise, to see beauty in the broken? Finally, I want to extend my sincerest thanks to all of you who have taken the time to share your stories on Reddit. Please continue to journey with us, share your experiences, and together, let's create memorable moments. Turmoil became darker, the strokes on the canvas more frantic, as if trying to exorcise the demons of betrayal and abandonment. In the depths of my despair I reached out, seeking solace in the shared wisdom of others who had navigated the treacherous waters of heartbreak and emerged on the other side. I poured my heart out on forums, in letters to unseen friends, and in late-night conversations with anyone who would listen. The question that burned within me was simple yet profound. How do you move forward when the past clings to you like a shadow? And so, I stand at the crossroads of my own making, drowning in a pain that is both a burden and a teacher. I reach out to you, to anyone who has felt the sting of betrayal, the ache of lost love, and the weight of a world turned upside down. How did you find your way back to the surface? How did you learn to breathe again, to find joy in the sunrise, to see beauty in the broken? Finally, I want to extend my sincerest thanks to all of you who have taken the time to share your stories on Reddit. Please continue to journey with us, share your experiences, and together, let's create memorable moments.